I want to be freed up to do the really important work, the higher level work, without having to be involved in decisions that I really don't add much value to. I just have an opinion informed by a longer viewpoint.
If I'm responsible as a CEO for culture and people in a smaller company, I've got to put some time and spend some time with the people, because as you say, you either have culture by intention or culture by default.
You have to go through and look at your culture and say, by our actions, what do we say that we value? And then you pull that out and you talk about it, you write about it, you communicate about it. The culture then attracts the right people and it throws the wrong people out the door. I think your culture is your biggest strategic differentiator, right? It's the biggest reason to be here than everything else. It is easier to live if you're surrounded by people who share the same values, who think that the same things are good ideas.
I know it probably depends upon the size of a company, and the size could be based on revenue, could be based on size of employees. I mean, there's different categories, right? But let's say in smaller businesses where maybe the employee count is, I'm just going to make up a number. You can tell me if there's a better definition, Trey, but 20 or under. There's a place where a lot of times the CEO says, well, I just need someone that, is, kind of creates a moat around me to let me do these things that are more visionary. And I just want that person. So I want a second command. Maybe that's a COO. I mean, director of operations. In a smaller company, does that make sense? In other words, what I'm getting at is what size do you need, really truly need middle management, and where in a company size is middle management just extra overhead that's really not moving the dial? I don't know if I phrased that very well.
No, I think you're nailing it.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I think you've got it. And I think your instincts are right, that it's roughly 20 to 25 people, and it's roughly that $2 to $6 to $7 million run rate, depending on the industry. So it's in that range where you have additional money to pay people to do solely management-based tasks. So if you're much smaller than that, if you're a 6 or 7 man company, maybe you're a dentist in a practice, or maybe you're an insurance guy or something of that nature. If I have 6 people in the practice, it doesn't make sense to me to take sort of 13% of one of those positions and make a manager of everybody else. People will resent it, and it's sort of a suck on resources to do that, for sure. There are different ways you can do it, of course. So a lot of times we take the highest producing person and make them the manager of other people, which then affects their production. And, that's one of the management sins, of course. But yeah, I think you're right that if you're ready to build that moat, there are half steps you can take that will produce results. But around the time you hit that, early $2 to $6 million, depending on the industry, run rate with about 20 to 25 people that are answering to you at that point, then it's really time to put a management structure in place. The chief of staff position is getting to be something that is more and more popular. Lots of times we call a director of operations or a COO by that title as well. And to your point, it is, hey, I want to be freed up to do the really important work, the higher level work, without having to be involved in decisions that I really don't add much value to. I just have an opinion informed by a longer viewpoint, typically, or I have to go do the production itself to some extent. And so we see that a lot. I just worked with a surgical practice last year, and it came to them that it was time to hire a CEO. That the chief surgeon, maybe just really was more happy being a surgeon,
right,
and benefiting from a well-run business instead of trying to do both. It wasn't a capability issue. If he had stopped doing surgeries, it would have cost the practice millions a year, and he wasn't ever really permitted to get really good at being a CEO. So that's all the challenges that you have to tease out with your executive coach and figure out. Are we on the right cadence? Are we on the right path to do it? But yeah, I see a lot more what we would used to call professionals hiring CEOs as professional managers or chief of staffs or director of operations. Yeah.
So in that smaller size company, and I'm thinking about myself, and probably a lot of the listeners that are listening to us today, Trey, would be, Like you, I love the art of the deal. I love to envision and create and orchestrate, put things together. I don't want to take them to fruition. So that's why I need the people around me that will take my vision. Hopefully I've created enough buy-in, the mission, the culture, the right people that people can take it. I don't enjoy a lot of meetings. But to me, it sounds like if I'm responsible as a CEO for culture and people in a smaller company, I've got to put some time and spend some time with the people, because as you say, you either have culture by intention or culture by default.
Right.
So can you give me just a few minutes here? I'm asking you to do a full consulting job in a matter of a podcast. Not fair to you at all, but give it your best shot if you would.
Yeah, I mean, this is exactly who we work with a lot of times. And, without talking about the end result, the process is, David, you have to be the one articulating the values and the culture. That is not something you can delegate. You can't hire a COO to come in and determine what the boundaries of your culture are going to be, because this is a theme that I've put my foot on this rail and I'm really sort of developing now. You and I start businesses for the money, yes. For the freedom, yes. But I think there's a much deeper reason that we do it. And I think that is to bring the values that we hold dear and show the world that this is the way to do it. This is the way we should treat each other. This is the way that we should be excellent in what we do. This is the way that we should produce this or this or this. We value those concepts, those ideas, those values. And so we spend a lot of time with the CEO figuring out what the culture should look like. Well, if you get the culture right, and again, there's no one size fits all. There's not a book you can buy that says here are the 4 cultural values that you should have. Actually, there are probably hundreds of that. None of them are useful at all. You have to go through and look at your culture and say, by our actions, what do we say that we value? And then you pull that out and you talk about it, you write about it, you communicate about it, you share it one-on-one, you share it in groups and that sort of thing. The more you do it and the better you do it, the more people will say, I am in for this, or this is nothing to do with me, I'm out. And when you go through ups and downs, people will say, maybe I got a better job offer, maybe I can make more money, maybe I could live closer to family, but I don't want to give up my participation in that culture. And then they will stay with you longer, or they'll have a better conversation with you. The culture then attracts the right people, and it throws the wrong people out the door. They just don't want to have anything to do with it, and gives you the opportunity to replace them with the good people. So we work with CEOs to figure that out. If that means not doing a couple of surgeries for 6 months, I'm okay with that. That's where the money should be spent. That's where the effort should be invested into the business to get that right. Once you have it right, you can delegate the participation in the culture to everyone in the culture. And I have a client that's named a chief cultural officer, because she thinks that it's so important for her business that was the second C-suite hire that she had, even before she had a COO. Working on the culture, working on the values, so that the people are developed and come and do their best work.
That's interesting. And it's so contrary to our thinking. As you said, the most important thing would be to give up a few of those surgeries, which means you're giving up current transactional income for the
Short
long
term.
game. For the long game, yes, for the long game. And it's so hard to do that. But it's almost a step of faith to do that. And I think that's where having a mentor, someone who's already gone down that path and helped others get through, that's what we really need. Because otherwise, sometimes having the confidence, and that's another big thing that you talk about in the book, is the CEO's got to develop a level of confidence. Because again, the buck stops with us, but to take those steps that we're afraid of taking, until we do that, nothing changes. We stay kind of on whatever the hamster wheel is that we're on right now. And whether we like it or not, it's going to stay the same unless we step out and make some definitive decisions and potential changes in the culture.
That's true. And there's a risk in not doing the cultural work, because like I say in the book, and you've alluded to, you have a culture whether you articulate it intentionally or you just let it sort of come to being. The difference between those two things are a culture that is articulated intentionally is designed to benefit all members, all participants in the culture. Maybe not equally, but designed to deliver benefit to everyone. An unarticulated culture, a lazy culture, a lowest common denominator culture is what we call it, benefits only those people who work themselves into positions where they can't be fired. You know, if you've got a sales guy and he's really producing every year, but he's a jerk to everybody in the building, that lowest common denominator culture will benefit him to the expense of everybody else in the organization. Yeah. And then eventually he leaves or gets fired anyway. And then you're still left with work to be done later. Right. So I'm just trying to save CEOs and business owners from having to go through that, which is a common trope that we see time and again.
I've just got to ask you one last question. It has to do with today, what we're dealing with in the huge cultural shifts that we are going through right now in society. A lot of it came up through the pandemic this last year and what's happened through that. There seems to be obviously a labor shortage for a number of different reasons out there today, and it's difficult to find good people, and people that we thought were good or had been with us for some time are making moves today and saying bye-bye. I'm going to some greener pastures, which may be another job, and maybe I'm just done and I have the capacity to do that. So I think you would easily say that culture is as important, if not more important today than it ever was before. It's always been important. But do you think that playing the game of just adding to a higher potential compensation to try to bring people in, is that the wrong move? Or do you combine compensation today with inflation factors and the culture? How does a CEO need to look at his labor force in going forward into the climate we have today?
I think your culture is your biggest strategic differentiator, right? It's the biggest reason to be here than everything else. And people will make trade-offs to have a pleasant work life. It is easier to live if you're surrounded by people who share the same values, who think that the same things are good ideas. It is a toxic and soul-killing environment to be around people who do what you consider to be morally wrong, at whatever grade you would stock that. So I think it's no longer this idea that having a good developed culture is some sort of benefit. It's the cover charge to get into the club, and then the price of the drinks or the price of the drinks in good economies or bad economies, whatever it happens to be. I have a friend who I think Jason Hartman. We have his as a friend together. I think he's one of the smartest economic minds I know. And he told me the other day, wages are never going back to where they were.
No,
it doesn't happen in history.
Right.
And so we go through times where people either don't work at all or they get paid what they're used to being paid because they have obligations to meet and that sort of thing. So with that said, if I don't have my culture built correctly, and I don't have the mindset of the business thinking, hey, we pay for good talent, and then we manage the talent to produce the results. Those are the numbers. If I'm not doing that work up front, I don't know how on earth you can recover when the roadblocks come. Because like you've seen now, I have a friend whose entire firm resigned on one Saturday morning.
Wow.
And if you asked him on Friday morning, he had the best culture and all of that sort of thing, but there was something toxic in that environment. And I don't know what it was. And I didn't ask him, of course, that's not my job as his friend, but it seems to me that you better get your culture correct. You better get your people correct and compensated correctly so that you can produce the numbers and put up the wins that you need to produce for your own self.
Well, Trey, a ton of wisdom there in a short 30 minutes period. The book, A CEO Only Does Three Things. It's a great read. I've underlined and tabbed, and it's really, really well done, which just shows the level of experience and wisdom that you have accrued over a number of years in your career. What's the best way for people to contact you or stay abreast of what you're doing, whether they would like to work with you or not? I think you're just so much wisdom. So what's the best way?
Well, the fun thing that I'm doing right now is a Substack newsletter. So it goes out whenever I feel like I've got enough good things to write about and put in the newsletter. So you can find that at plantyourflag.live. And it comes out once a week, sometimes 5 times a week if I'm just really hot and heavy on a topic. And we've got 10 or 11,000 people that get that around the country. And we get really good feedback from it, some ideas, say, hey, you should interview this person, or you should look into this aspect of cryptocurrency, or here's a great bottle of wine, that kind of thing. So it's a little bit wide ranging by design, but it's the freshest thing, and it's obviously delivered straight to your inbox there. You can find me personally on trey-taylor.com or consulting-wise at trinity-blue.com. That's our consulting firm. And then obviously the book has a website, a CEO only does 3things.com, and you can find that on Amazon. And David, I'm really pleased to tell you, one of the first persons I've shared this with is that we have now published the Audible book as well. So you're out ahead of the book launch period here for that. But, I heard enough times from people, I just don't have time to read books anymore. I need you to do an Audible book if you want me to hear this. And so against my own advice, the publisher insisted that I read the book. And so it is out. It's doing phenomenally well. And we sold 2,100 copies in Japan.
Wow.
In 1 week period in October. And we have no idea why that was the case. So that's kind of a fun fact that we're trying to run down right now. But those are the best places to sort of find me. And then you can find me on LinkedIn, of course. Trey Taylor JD is the LinkedIn ID there.
Perfect. We'll put all those links in the show notes. Well, Trey, thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate the time and, of course, the insights that you bring in every conversation we get to have.
David, always fun to be with you. You know, I'm a fan of Own Your Freedom as well, and appreciate the advance peek at that book. Also, I think it's a really well thought out and implementable book. And, it's not just somebody's ideas about how you might do something. It's, hey, here's how you do it. Step 1, step 2. I really love that. So thanks for that contribution to the conversation. And thanks for having me on today.
You bet, Trey. Talk to you soon. If you enjoyed watching or learning from this video, please leave a like and subscribe to my channel for more content. If you have a question about any of my content or this specific video, just please leave a comment down below. And as always, stay focused on your freedom. I'll see you next time.